On average, a person spends 90,000 hours of their life at work. That's more than 10 years. And yet most people have never asked themselves, where did work even come from? Stage 1, survival, 10,000 BC. Ancient humans worked roughly 3 to 4 hours a day. The rest of the time they ate, slept, and socialized. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Before the agricultural revolution, the concept of work didn't exist at all. People hunted, gathered berries and roots, made simple tools. Not because they got paid for it, but because otherwise you simply died. All of this was experienced as a single process of living, not as a separate part of it. Most hunter-gatherer languages still have no word that translates as work. Anthropologists discovered this not from ancient bones, but by observing living people. In the 1960s, researchers spent several months among the Kung people in the Kalahari Desert. The result surprised everyone. An adult spent only 15 to 20 hours a week feeding themselves. That's less time than a modern employee spends in meetings. The rest of the time, people in the tribe spent talking, playing, sleeping, and doing what we'd today call leisure. Another piece of evidence for how much free time ancient people had is cave art. Take the paintings in the Lascaux cave in France, where people lived 17,000 years ago. If they'd been constantly occupied with survival, they wouldn't have found time for completely useless drawings. That's how ancient humans lived. No boss, no schedule, no division between work and personal time. The only measure of success was whether you survived the day. But everything changed when humans decided to settle in one place. Agriculture brought stability and food surpluses. Now there was abundance. Stage 2, specialization, 3000 BC. Once people had a surplus of food, some members of the community simply stopped gathering it. For the first time in history, agriculture freed part of the population from having to feed themselves directly. Someone could do something else instead, and people began to specialize. A potter made pots better than a hunter. A blacksmith forged tools better than a farmer. The narrower the specialization, the higher the quality and speed. This is how the division of labor emerged. One of the most powerful ideas in human history. In ancient Greece, this division took an unexpected philosophical turn. The Greeks were the first to ask which kinds of work were actually worthy of a human being. The aristocracy's answer was unambiguous. Craft and trade were lower-class occupations, fit for slaves and foreigners. A free citizen was supposed to engage in politics, philosophy, and war. Aristotle argued directly that manual labor deformed the body and soul, making a person incapable of virtue. So, for the first time in history, work was divided not just by function, but by status. But reality proved stronger than philosophy. Skilled specialists were so valuable that even pharaohs couldn't afford to ignore them. The builders of the Egyptian pyramids were highly skilled workers with clear specializations. They went on strike several times, demanding their rations be paid on time. And the pharaoh gave in. There was simply no one to replace a master craftsman with. Specialization made people irreplaceable, but also dependent on each other. A potter doesn't know how to hunt. A blacksmith doesn't grow grain. Each one constantly relies on the other. And a need arises to somehow control all of this. For example, through force. Stage 3, coercion, 500 BC. At some point, humanity had to solve a difficult problem. How do you get people to work more for less reward? The answer turned out to be monstrous. Why pay for labor when you can simply force it? Forced labor in one form or another existed in nearly every civilization on the planet. But nowhere did it reach such scale and systemization as in ancient Rome. At the peak of the Roman economy, roughly 30 to 40% of Italy's population were slaves. These weren't just servants. They were the foundation of the entire economic system. Slaves built roads, mined metal, worked the fields, and crewed ships. Without them, Rome simply wouldn't have existed in the form we know it. The army constantly conquered new territories and turned the local population into slaves. The economy literally fed on war. But this system had a hidden weakness. Once the empire's borders stopped expanding, the flow of slaves dried up, fields emptied, mines shut down, productivity collapsed. An economy built on coercion didn't know how to function any other way. Historians consider this one of the key causes of Rome's fall. But forced labor, of course, didn't disappear with Rome's collapse. Serfs in Russia, for example, could be lost in card games right up until 1861. Slavery stopped being the norm not because people became kinder. A new system simply emerged, one that squeezed even more out of a person without needing to keep them in chains. Stage 4. Employment, 1800. The Industrial Revolution didn't free people from hard labor. It just made it run around the clock. At the start of the 19th century, most people worked for themselves, in the field, in a workshop, at home. The factory changed that forever. Now work had an address, a schedule, and a boss. People moved en masse from villages to cities in search of wages. Manchester in the 1830s is the clearest illustration of what this led to. Cotton mills ran 24 hours a day. The workday lasted 14 to 16 hours. Children as young as 6 worked in production. Average life expectancy in Manchester's working-class districts didn't exceed 28 years. Windows in early British factories were deliberately made small and placed high near the ceiling, officially for safety. In reality, so workers couldn't see daylight, couldn't tell what time it was, and wouldn't get distracted from their machines. A young Friedrich Engels arrived here in 1842 and was so shaken by what he saw that he wrote a book about it, one that became one of the defining political texts of the following century. This system held up exactly until people gained a choice. Unions, strikes, labor protection laws. People fought for and won all of this over the course of 100 years. By the mid-20th century, the workday had been cut in half, and vacations and sick leave appeared. It seemed like a balance had been found. But while workers were fighting for an 8-hour day at the machine, somewhere in quiet offices, a completely different type of worker was already taking shape. One for whom the boundaries of the workday would turn out to be far more blurred. Stage 5. Autonomy, 1970. For the first time in history, a person can work a full day without leaving home, still in their pajamas. But somehow, that doesn't make them happier. After World War II, a new type of worker began to emerge in developed countries: the office worker. Now people worked not at a machine, but at a desk, with paperwork and a telephone. Physical labor gave way to mental labor. Factories gave way to offices. It seemed like humanity had finally broken free of centuries of hard labor. But Silicon Valley in the 1990s rewrote the rules all over again. Google, Apple, Facebook built campuses with free food, gyms, laundry rooms, and game rooms. Sounds like a dream, until you understand the reason behind it. Companies wanted employees who never went home. 60 to 80-hour work weeks became the norm, even a point of pride. Overwork turned into a virtue. It was precisely then, as a response to this unhealthy relationship with work, that the term work-life balance was born. Meanwhile, the average office worker is productively working only about 3 hours a day. The exact same amount of time a hunter-gatherer spent finding food 10,000 years ago. Except the hunter was free afterward. The smartphone tied people to their jobs for good. Now work lives in your pocket. We barely even noticed how a message from the boss at night, or work chats during vacation, became normal. Why did we ever agree to this? Over 10,000 years, work went from 3 hours of hunting to round-the-clock duty. We won back the 8-hour day from the factory, but voluntarily handed our time over to the smartphone. So what comes next? Artificial intelligence is already doing half of what people used to get paid for just yesterday. It's even helping make videos like this one. Some say it will free humans for creativity and meaning. Others say it will simply leave them without jobs. Humanity has faced uncertainty at every revolution, steam, industrial, digital, but each time we adapted to the new conditions. We can only hope that in the new world, we'll need to work 3 hours a day, not 16.